She was starting over after 4 years of broken promises. He was a CEO drowning in loneliness and family secrets. One accidental text to the wrong number, and a stranger showed up at her door in the rain.
Who are you?
I got a text, this address. I thought someone was waiting for me.
What started as a simple mistake became something neither expected. But when the truth about his hidden past surfaces, a secret son, a dying father, and a web of corporate lies, everything changes.
Trust doesn't come as easily to me as it used to.
No more secrets, I promise.
2 broken hearts, 1 chance encounter, and secrets that could destroy everything. Will a woman who's been betrayed before risk everything for a man whose life is built on hidden truths? Or will the weight of his past tear apart the love they never saw coming? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you're watching from today. Rain pounded against the windows of the small cottage as Naomi Carter unpacked the last box of her belongings. She pushed a strand of curly black hair behind her ear and looked around the living room. It wasn't much, but it was hers. No more walking on eggshells. No more waiting up all night for someone who never bothered to call. No more broken promises. 4 years down the drain, she muttered, carefully placing a framed photo of her parents on the mantel. Her mother had warned her about Jerome. That man has more excuses than a politician on trial, she'd said. Naomi wished she'd listened sooner. Outside, the rain grew heavier. The cottage on the outskirts of Baltimore felt isolated, especially on a night like this. Loneliness crept in like the dampness from the storm. Naomi reached for her phone and scrolled to her cousin Aisha's number. If anyone could lift her spirits, it was Aisha. She typed a quick message. Come by if you can. Thorser 18 Sycamore. I'll be here. Naomi hit send and went to make a cup of tea. She didn't notice that in her haste, she'd selected the wrong contact. Across town, in a sleek, high-rise office building, Miles Whitaker stared out at the same rain through floor-to-ceiling windows. The board meeting had run late, and he was the only one left in the conference room. His reflection in the glass looked back at him. Tailored suit, perfect tie, empty eyes. Money can't fix everything, Miles. His father's words from earlier that day echoed in his head. They'd argued again about Miles's attempt to pay for his mother's treatment at an exclusive facility. She doesn't need your money. She needs her son to actually show up. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts, an unknown number. The message read, "Come by if you can, 418 Sycamore, I'll be here." Miles frowned. Wrong number, obviously. He should ignore it. But something about those simple words tugged at him. I'll be here. When was the last time anyone had been there for him, or waited for him, not for what he could provide? He picked up his keys, telling himself this was ridiculous. Yet 15 minutes later, he found himself pulling into a gas station, asking the attendant where he might find flowers at this hour. Naomi jumped at the sound of knocking. Aisha had actually come. She hadn't expected her cousin to brave this weather, but she was grateful. Wiping her hands on her jeans, she hurried to the door. When she swung it open, the words of greeting died on her lips. Instead of her cousin's familiar face, a tall white man stood on her porch soaking wet, clutching a bunch of white lilies. His expensive suit was plastered to his body, and rainwater dripped from his dark hair onto his face. "Who are you?" Naomi demanded, her hand instinctively reaching for the door to slam it shut. The man looked almost as surprised as she was. "I got a text. This address. I thought—" He held out the flowers awkwardly. "I'm Miles Whitaker." Naomi's mind raced. A text? Then she realized what had happened. Oh my God, I texted the wrong number. She should close the door. This was exactly the kind of situation her mother had warned her about when she'd moved out here alone. But there was something in the man's eyes. A tiredness, a loneliness that mirrored her own that made her hesitate. "You actually came to a stranger's house because of a wrong number?" she asked, not hiding her disbelief. Miles shifted uncomfortably. "It sounds crazy when you say it out loud." Despite herself, Naomi laughed. "It is crazy." A particularly strong gust of wind drove the rain sideways, drenching Miles further. He didn't complain, just stood there holding the dripping flowers, looking like he was already regretting his impulsive decision. "You should come in before you catch pneumonia," Naomi said, surprising herself. "But just so we're clear, my neighbor across the street is a police officer, and I have his number on speed dial." Miles nodded seriously. "That's smart." He stepped inside, careful to stay on the welcome mat, not wanting to drip all over her floor. Under the proper light of the entryway, Naomi got her first good look at him. Despite being soaked, there was no mistaking the quality of his clothes or the confident way he carried himself. This was a man used to being in charge. "I'm Naomi Carter," she said, taking the flowers, "and you're getting water all over my floor anyway. Wait here." She returned with a towel and handed it to him. "So, Miles Whitaker, what made you decide to show up at a stranger's door in the middle of a storm?" Miles dried his face, considering the question. "Honestly, I don't know. It was impulsive. Stupid, probably." He paused. "I was having a bad day. The text came and it just seemed, I don't know, like someone was actually waiting for me." The raw honesty of his answer caught Naomi off guard. "I was waiting for my cousin," she admitted. "I just moved in. It's my first night here alone." "I should go," Miles said quickly. "I didn't mean to intrude." "No, stay," Naomi surprised herself again. "At least until the rain lets up. I made tea." They sat across from each other at Naomi's small kitchen table, two strangers connected by a wrong number and the rhythm of rain on the roof. Miles looked out of place in the cozy cottage kitchen, his expensive watch catching the light as he lifted his mug. "So what do you do, Miles Whitaker, besides responding to texts from strangers?" "I run a company, Whitaker Enterprises. We develop medical technologies." He said it simply, without pride or boasting. Naomi raised an eyebrow. "A CEO at my kitchen table. Should I be impressed?" A smile flickered across his face. "Most people pretend to be. I'm not most people, and I've learned the hard way that titles don't tell you much about a person." She studied him. "What were you doing alone at work so late that you could drop everything for a wrong number?" Miles looked down at his tea. "Board meeting. It ran long." "And after that? No one waiting at home?" "No, not anymore." The words hung in the air between them. Naomi felt a pang of recognition, the same emptiness she'd been trying to fill by inviting Aisha over. "Me neither. That's why I texted my cousin. I ended a relationship recently, 4 years down the drain." "I'm sorry," Miles said, and he sounded like he meant it. "What about you? You said not anymore. What's your story?" Miles hesitated. "Divorced parents. Dad remarried. Mom's sick. Brother and sister, who'd rather pretend I don't exist. Had a fiancé once, but that ended badly." "Sounds complicated." "It is. And boring. Tell me about you instead." Naomi leaned back in her chair. "Not much to tell. I'm a nurse at Mercy Hospital. Moved here to start fresh after breaking up with my ex. He was," she searched for the right words, "very good at making promises he never intended to keep." Miles nodded. "I know the type. Do you? You strike me as the one who makes the promises, not the one who gets let down." His eyes met hers. "We all get let down, Naomi. Some of us just hide it better than others." The power flickered, and for a moment, the cottage was plunged into darkness before the lights came back on. Naomi jumped slightly. "Not a fan of the dark?" Miles asked. "Not a fan of being reminded how isolated this place is," she admitted. "My ex thought it was ridiculous that I wanted to live closer to town. What made you choose this place?" Naomi got up and walked to the window. The rain was still coming down hard. "It reminded me of my grandmother's house. I spent summers there as a kid. It was the one place I always felt safe." Miles joined her at the window, careful to keep a respectful distance. "And do you feel safe here?" "I'm working on it," she said honestly. "Safety isn't just about locks and alarms. It's about trusting yourself again." Miles looked at her with new interest. "That's profound," Naomi laughed. "Don't sound so surprised. There's more to life than board meetings, Mr. CEO. For the first time that evening, Miles smiled fully. The transformation was remarkable. The tired, closed-off man who had appeared on her doorstep seemed to momentarily fade away. "You know what's strange?" he said. "This is the most honest conversation I've had with anyone in months." "That's sad," Naomi replied, but without judgment. "It is, isn't it?" Miles agreed. He checked his watch. "I should go. The rain's letting up and you probably want your evening back." Naomi walked him to the door. "Thank you for the flowers, even if they were the result of a wrong number." Miles paused at the threshold. "Naomi, would it be completely inappropriate if I asked for your real number? Intentionally this time?" Naomi studied him. Everything about this situation screamed caution. He was a stranger. He was clearly from a different world than hers. And yet, "Give me your phone," she said finally. Miles handed it over, and she entered her number. "Don't make me regret this, Miles Whitaker." "I'll try not to," he promised, and something in his voice made her believe him. 2 days later, Naomi was finishing her shift at Mercy Hospital when her phone buzzed with a text. "Had to be in your neighborhood for a meeting. Any chance you'd let a familiar stranger buy you dinner?" "Miles." Naomi smiled despite herself. She typed back, "Familiar strangers don't exist, but dinner sounds nice, 7 p.m. The response came quickly. "I'll be there." Her colleague, Tasha, glanced over. "Must be some text to put that smile on your face." "Don't tell me Jerome is trying to worm his way back." "God, no," Naomi said firmly. "It's someone new. Well, not new. It's complicated." "Honey, with you it always is," Tasha laughed. "Just be careful. You've got a heart that heals other people but forgets to protect itself." "It's just dinner," Naomi insisted, but as she changed out of her scrubs, she found herself taking extra care with her appearance. Miles arrived exactly at 7, this time without flowers but with the same intensity in his eyes. He'd traded the business suit for dark jeans and a button-down shirt that somehow looked just as expensive. "I thought we could walk to that Italian place down the street," he suggested, "unless you'd prefer something else." "Italian is perfect," Naomi said, grabbing her jacket. "But I should warn you, I just got off a 12-hour shift. I might fall asleep in my pasta." Miles smiled that transformative smile again. "Then I'll make sure to order something with extra garlic to keep you awake." The restaurant was small and cozy, with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles. Not too fancy, but nice enough for a first, whatever this was. "So," Naomi said after they'd ordered, "what kind of meeting brings a big-shot CEO to my humble neighborhood?" Miles looked slightly embarrassed. "There was no meeting. I just wanted to see you again." The honesty surprised her. Most men would have made up an impressive business reason. "I'm learning that honesty might be refreshing." He studied her. "You look tired. Tough day?" "Lost a patient," Naomi said quietly. "Elderly man, heart failure. His wife of 50 years was holding his hand when he went." Miles reached across the table and briefly touched her hand. "I'm sorry. It's part of the job, the hardest part." She took a sip of her wine. "What about you? What's the hardest part of your job?" Miles considered this. Remembering that behind every decision there are real people. It's easy to get lost in numbers and projections. "And do you? Get lost in the numbers?" "More often than I'd like to admit," he said. "My father says I use money to solve problems because I don't know how to actually connect with people." "Is he right?" Miles's expression grew distant. "Probably. But it's easier to write a check than to face things that can't be fixed." "Like what?" Before he could answer, the waiter arrived with their food. The moment passed, and Miles skillfully steered the conversation to lighter topics. But Naomi had glimpsed something beneath the surface, a pain he kept carefully hidden. Over the next few weeks, Naomi and Miles fell into a rhythm. He would text, suggesting dinner or a walk, or once, memorably, a midnight ice cream run when Naomi had called him after a particularly difficult shift. There was something between them, a connection neither had expected, but Naomi kept a part of herself guarded. Miles was still a mystery in many ways. He spoke little about his family or his past, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. "You're like one of those Russian dolls," she told him one evening as they sat on her porch swing. "Every time I think I've figured you out, there's another layer underneath." "Is that a bad thing?" he asked. "It is if I never get to the center," she replied honestly. Miles was quiet for a long moment. "Some things are hard to talk about, Naomi." "I know, but relationships, friendships, whatever this is, they're built on trust, and trust requires honesty. What if the honest truth isn't something you want to hear?" His voice had an edge she hadn't heard before. "Try me," she challenged. Miles stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, his back to her. "My fiancée, Vanessa. She left because I couldn't give her what she needed." "Which was?" "Emotion, vulnerability, all the things that terrify me." He turned to face her. "I grew up in a house where feelings were a weakness, where every problem had a practical solution. When my mother got sick, my father's response was to leave. His solution was to start a new family, one that wasn't broken. My solution was to make enough money to fix everything. Neither of us knew how to just be there." Naomi joined him at the porch railing. "And now I'm standing on a porch with a woman who sees through every defense I've built, and it scares the hell out of me." His honesty was raw, unexpected. Naomi took his hand. "It scares me too. I promised myself I wouldn't trust so easily again. Yet here we are, she agreed. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. But she didn't. Their first kiss was gentle, questioning. The second was not. A week later, Naomi was sorting through her mail when she found an envelope addressed to Miles. Confused, she checked the address. It was correctly addressed to her cottage. She called Miles immediately. "There's a letter here for you at my address." "That's strange," he said, sounding genuinely puzzled. "I'll pick it up when I see you tonight." Curiosity got the better of her. The return address was from a law firm she didn't recognize. What would a lawyer be sending Miles at her address? She shouldn't open it. It wasn't hers, but something felt wrong. The timing, the secrecy. With trembling fingers, she carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As she read, her blood turned cold. The letter concerned a settlement agreement, a confidentiality clause, a young woman named Eliza Winters, and a child. A 5-year-old boy that, according to the DNA results attached, was undeniably Miles's son, a son he had apparently paid to keep secret. The letter slipped from Naomi's fingers and fluttered to the floor. In the silence of the cottage, she could hear her grandmother's voice. "Trust is like fine china, baby girl. Once it's broken, all the glue in the world can't make it whole again." The doorbell rang. Miles was early. Naomi picked up the letter, her mind racing. The man she thought she was beginning to know, was he the same man who had done this? Who had hidden a child? She opened the door, the letter clutched in her hand, and faced the man who had shown up with flowers on a rainy night. The man who might have just broken her heart before she'd even fully given it to him. "Naomi?" Miles's smile faded as he saw her expression. Then his eyes fell to the open letter in her hand, and all the color drained from his face. "Where did you get that?" "It came here, to my address." Her voice was steady despite the storm inside her. "Who is Eliza Winters, Miles? And why didn't you tell me you have a son?" "Who is Eliza Winters, Miles? And why didn't you tell me you have a son?" Miles stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes fixed on the letter in Naomi's hand. The color had drained from his face, leaving him ashen under the porch light. "You opened my mail?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. Naomi straightened her shoulders. "It came to my address with your name on it, from a law firm. What's going on, Miles?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The easy warmth that had been growing between them over the past weeks had vanished, replaced by a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. "It's complicated," he said finally. "Children usually are," Naomi replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. 5 years old, according to this letter. "Were you planning to tell me?" Miles ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize when he was stressed. "Can I sit down?" Naomi nodded stiffly and followed him to the living room, the same room where they had shared tea that first rainy night. It felt like a lifetime ago. Miles sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head bowed. "Eliza and it was a brief thing, before Vanessa. I didn't know about the pregnancy until after it was over. And when you found out?" "I panicked," he admitted. "My company was just taking off. I was engaged to Vanessa. It was bad timing all around." Naomi felt cold disappointment settle in her chest. "So you paid her off, to keep your son a secret?" Miles looked up, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It wasn't like that. Eliza didn't want me involved. She was the one who suggested the arrangement. She needed financial security, not a reluctant father." "And the boy? What does he need?" The question hung in the air between them. Miles had no answer. Naomi set the letter on the coffee table. "I thought I was starting to know who you are, Miles, but this," she gestured to the letter, "this is exactly the kind of thing Jerome would do. Hide the hard truths, avoid responsibility. I promised myself I wouldn't fall for that again." "I'm not Jerome," Miles said, an edge of frustration in his voice. "Aren't you? You've been coming here for weeks, sharing meals, sharing—" She stopped, the memory of their kisses still fresh. "And not once did you mention you have a child." "Because I don't." Miles stood up abruptly. "Not really. I've never met him. I've never been a father to him." "That's the problem, Miles." Naomi's voice was quiet but firm. "You're his father whether you've met him or not. And you chose money over being there for him." Miles paced the small living room. "You don't understand. My father left when things got hard. I didn't leave, I provided. I made sure they had everything they needed. Except you," Naomi said simply. The words hit Miles like a physical blow. He stopped pacing and sank back onto the couch, his face in his hands. "I need you to go," Naomi said, after a moment of heavy silence. Miles looked up, stricken. "Naomi, please. I need time to think, Miles. It's too much." He stood slowly, his shoulders slumped in defeat. At the door, he turned back to her. "For what it's worth, I was going to tell you. I was afraid of losing you." "You should have been more afraid of lying to me," Naomi replied, and closed the door behind him. The hospital corridor buzzed with the usual morning activity as Naomi checked her patient's charts. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying the confrontation with Miles over and over. "You look like something the cat dragged in, chewed up and spit back out," Tasha said, appearing at her side with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Naomi. "Bad night?" "The worst," Naomi admitted, gratefully accepting the coffee. "Remember that new guy I mentioned? Mr. Complicated, what did he do? Turns out he has a 5-year-old son he never bothered to mention, one he's never even met." Tasha's eyes widened. "Girl, you sure know how to pick 'em." "I thought he was different," Naomi sighed. "He seemed so, I don't know, real, despite all his walls. Men like that don't change, honey. My mama always said a man who runs from responsibility once will run again. That's what scares me," Naomi admitted. "I can't go through another Jerome situation, I won't." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Miles. "I know you need space, I respect that, but when you're ready to talk, I'll be here. There's more to the story." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Naomi slipped the phone back into her pocket without replying. "That him?" Tasha asked. Naomi nodded. "You going to hear him out?" "I don't know yet." Tasha gave her a knowing look. "Which means you will. Just be careful, Naomi. That heart of yours is too precious to break twice." 3 days passed. Miles texted each morning, not pushing, just letting her know he was thinking about her. Naomi read each message, but didn't respond. On the 4th day, the doorbell rang just as she was getting home from her shift. She opened the door to find not Miles, but a striking woman with auburn hair and sharp green eyes. "Naomi Carter?" the woman asked, her voice coolly professional. "Yes, I'm Vanessa Phillips, Miles's ex-fiancée. May I come in?" Naomi's shock must have shown on her face because Vanessa's expression softened slightly. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she said. "Quite the opposite." Numbly, Naomi stepped aside, allowing Vanessa to enter. The woman carried herself with the same confidence Miles did, the kind that came from privilege and power. "You have a lovely home," Vanessa said, glancing around the cottage. "It's very cozy." The way she said cozy made it sound like a polite substitution for small. "Thank you," Naomi replied stiffly. "What can I do for you, Ms. Phillips? Please call me Vanessa." She sat down on the couch without being invited, crossing her legs elegantly. "I understand you and Miles have been seeing each other. Did Miles send you?" Naomi asked, remaining standing. Vanessa laughed, a polished sound that held little warmth. "God, no. He'd be furious if he knew I was here, but I felt I owed it to you. Woman to woman. Owed me what exactly? The truth about Miles Whitaker, about Eliza Winters, and about the child." Naomi's heart raced. "I'm listening." "Miles didn't abandon his son," Vanessa said bluntly. "He tried to be involved. Eliza refused." This wasn't what Naomi had expected to hear. "What do you mean?" "When Miles found out about the pregnancy, he wanted to do the right thing. Break our engagement, co-parent with Eliza. Very noble." Vanessa's tone made it clear what she thought of noble gestures. But Eliza had other plans. She was moving to Europe with her new boyfriend. She didn't want Miles complicating things. "So she suggested the settlement," Naomi said slowly, pieces falling into place. Vanessa nodded. "Miles fought it, even took it to court. But in the end, the judge sided with Eliza. She had full custody, and Miles had visitation rights he couldn't exercise with the child living in Switzerland." "Why are you telling me this?" Naomi asked, confusion replacing her anger. Vanessa studied her perfectly manicured nails. "Because Miles won't. He'd rather let you think he's the villain than speak ill of Eliza, or admit he failed his son. That makes no sense." "It does, if you know Miles." Vanessa's eyes met Naomi's, suddenly intense. "He blames himself for everything. His mother's illness, his father's departure, our broken engagement. In his mind, if he'd been better, stronger, more present, none of it would have happened." Naomi sank into the armchair across from Vanessa, her mind reeling. "If what you're saying is true, why did that letter come here? Why now?" "Because Eliza's back in the States and she's in financial trouble." Vanessa stood up, smoothing her immaculate skirt. "Miles has been trying to re-establish contact with his son. That's why the lawyer sent the letter. They're renegotiating the custody arrangement." "And you know all this how?" "Miles and I may not be together anymore, but we're still partners in the business. And friends, after a fashion." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card, placing it on the coffee table. "My number in case you have questions, or in case he breaks your heart too." At the door, Vanessa paused. "He's not perfect, Naomi, far from it, but he's not the man you think he is either." After Vanessa left, Naomi sat for a long time, staring at the business card on her table. Finally, she reached for her phone. They met at a small park halfway between Naomi's cottage and downtown. Miles was already there when she arrived, sitting on a bench, staring at the duck pond with unseeing eyes. He looked up as she approached, hope and wariness battling in his expression. You came. Your ex-fiancé paid me a visit, Naomi said, sitting beside him but maintaining a careful distance. Miles's face paled. Vanessa, what did she want? To tell me your side of the story, the one you were too stubborn or too proud to tell yourself. She had no right to interfere, Miles said, anger flashing in his eyes. No, she didn't, but I'm glad someone told me the truth. Naomi turned to face him directly. Why didn't you, Miles? Why let me believe the worst? He was silent for a long moment, watching a mother and child feed the ducks by the pond's edge. Because the truth doesn't change the outcome. I have a son I've never met, a son who doesn't know me. Whether that was Eliza's choice or mine doesn't change that fact. It changes everything, Naomi insisted. Intent matters. You tried to be there for him and failed, Miles said bitterly. Do you know what my father said when I told him about the situation? Like father, like son, as if I'd deliberately chosen to follow in his footsteps. Naomi's heart ached for him. But you didn't. You fought for your son. Not hard enough. Miles looked at her, raw pain in his eyes. I let the lawyers handle it. I threw money at the problem instead of getting on a plane to Switzerland and demanding to see my child. I told myself it was for the best, that he had a new father figure, that disrupting his life would be selfish. And now? Vanessa said Eliza's back in the States. Miles nodded. She contacted me last month. Her new relationship didn't work out. She's struggling financially. And suddenly, she thinks it might be good for James to know his biological father. James, that's his name? A small smile touched Miles's lips. James Everett Winters, he's 5, smart according to Eliza, likes dinosaurs and space. Have you seen pictures? Miles reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He scrolled to a photo and handed it to her. A small boy with Miles's dark hair and serious eyes looked back at the camera, his smile revealing a missing front tooth. He looks like you, Naomi said softly. I'm meeting him next week, Miles said, his voice thick with emotion. For the first time, Naomi handed the phone back. I'm glad, Miles. Every child deserves to know where they come from. I'm terrified, he admitted. What if he hates me? What if I'm terrible at this? I don't exactly have the best role models for fatherhood. You'll figure it out. Naomi hesitated, then placed her hand over his. But Miles, you should have told me. From the beginning. I know. He turned his hand to clasp hers. I was afraid. The night I got that wrong text from you, it was the first time in years I felt like maybe I could start fresh. Be the man I want to be, not the man my past made me. You can't outrun your past, Miles. Believe me, I've tried. Can you forgive me? He asked, his eyes searching hers. I'm working on it, she said honestly. But no more secrets. I've had enough of those to last a lifetime. Miles nodded solemnly. No more secrets. As they walked back to their cars, Miles asked hesitantly, Would you consider coming with me? To meet James? Naomi stopped in her tracks. Miles, that's a big moment. It should be just you and him. I know. You're right. He looked embarrassed. I guess I'm just nervous about facing it alone. Naomi softened. How about this? I'll help you prepare. We can talk about what to say, what to bring, and I'll be nearby if you need moral support afterward. Relief washed over his face. Thank you. The following week was a whirlwind. Naomi helped Miles shop for age-appropriate gifts for James. Nothing too extravagant, but thoughtful. A dinosaur encyclopedia, a model rocket kit they could build together. The night before the meeting, Miles came over for dinner, his nerves evident in every movement. What if he doesn't like me? He asked for the 100th time. He's 5, Miles. Bring dinosaurs and ice cream and you'll be his hero, Naomi assured him, though her own stomach was in knots on his behalf. They were washing dishes together when Miles suddenly set down the plate he was drying and turned to her. I love you, he said simply. Naomi nearly dropped the glass she was rinsing. What? I love you, he repeated. I know it's fast. I know we've had ups and downs. But these past weeks, even with everything that's happened, you've made me want to be better. To face things I've been running from for years. Naomi carefully set the glass in the sink. Miles, you don't have to say it back, he said quickly. I just needed you to know, before tomorrow, before everything changes again. Naomi looked up at him, this complicated man who had shown up at her door with flowers meant for someone else, who had hidden parts of himself out of shame and fear, who was now facing his biggest fear head-on. I think I could love you too, she said softly. But I need time. Trust doesn't come as easily to me as it used to. Miles nodded, understanding in his eyes. Time is something I can give. The cafe where Miles was to meet Eliza and James was a cheerful place with bright murals and a play area in the corner. Naomi sat at a table far enough away to give them privacy, but close enough to be a reassuring presence. When Miles walked in, his face was a mask of careful control. He spotted Naomi and gave her a tight smile before taking a seat at a table near the window. 10 minutes later, a slender woman with honey blonde hair entered, holding the hand of a small boy. The same boy from the photo, but somehow more real, more vibrant in person. James wore a t-shirt with a cartoon dinosaur on it, and he clutched a small action figure in his free hand. Naomi watched as Miles stood to greet them. She couldn't hear what was said, but she saw the moment Miles knelt down to James's level, saw the careful handshake between man and boy, saw the tentative smile that spread across Miles's face when James showed him the action figure. She was so focused on their interaction that she didn't notice someone approaching her table until a shadow fell across it. "Excuse me, are you Naomi Carter?" Naomi looked up to see a tall, elegantly dressed woman with silver-streaked dark hair and Miles's eyes. "Yes," she answered, puzzled. "I'm Catherine Whitaker, Miles's mother." The woman's voice was cultured but warm. "May I join you?" Stunned, Naomi nodded. "Of course. I didn't realize. Miles said you were ill." A shadow crossed Catherine's face. "I was. Cancer. In remission now, thank God." She looked over at her son, now sitting with James, helping him color something. "He doesn't know I'm here. I've been following the situation from a distance. You know about James. I've known for years. Miles doesn't realize it, but a mother always knows when her child is carrying a burden." Catherine's gaze returned to Naomi, assessing. "And you? How do you fit into all this?" Before Naomi could answer, Catherine continued, "Never mind. I can see it in the way you look at him, the same way I looked at his father once upon a time. Miles and I are complicated," Naomi said carefully. Catherine laughed softly. "The Whitaker men usually are. Brilliant at business, disasters at relationships." Her expression grew serious. "Has he told you about the trust?" "What trust?" Catherine glanced around, lowering her voice. "When James was born, Miles set up a trust fund in his name, a substantial one, separate from the settlement with Eliza. He's been adding to it every year on James's birthday." "No," Naomi said slowly. "He didn't mention that." "No, he wouldn't," Catherine sighed. "My son believes money can't buy love, a lesson his father taught him too well. But he doesn't understand that sometimes financial security is a form of love too, a flawed one perhaps, but sincere." Across the cafe, James was laughing at something Miles had said. The boy's face was alight with curiosity and that simple joy children have when they're the center of someone's attention. "Why are you telling me this?" Naomi asked. Catherine's eyes, so like her son's, met Naomi's. "Because Miles needs someone who sees him clearly, all of him, the good and the bad. Someone who won't let him hide behind his walls or his wealth." She reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "This came to my house by mistake. It's addressed to Miles, but I think you should see it." Naomi stared at the envelope, a sense of déjà vu washing over her. "I don't think I should open Miles's mail again. That didn't end well last time." "This is different," Catherine insisted, pushing the envelope across the table. "This is about his father." Reluctantly, Naomi took the envelope. The return address was from a hospice center in Arizona. "Miles's father is dying," Catherine said quietly. "He's been trying to contact Miles for months, but Miles won't take his calls, won't read his letters." "That's Miles's choice," Naomi said, uncomfortable with being drawn into family drama. "Yes, it is, but he's making it without all the facts." Catherine stood up, her elegance undiminished by age or illness. "Robert wants to make amends before he dies. He wants to meet his grandson, and he has something to tell Miles, something that might help him understand why his father left all those years ago." "What?" Catherine shook her head. "It's not my place to say, but Miles deserves to know the truth even if it's painful." She looked once more at her son, love and sorrow mingling in her gaze. "We all make mistakes, Miss Carter. Some of us spend a lifetime trying to make up for them." With that, she walked out of the cafe, leaving Naomi staring at the envelope in her hands. Across the room, Miles looked up and saw her. His eyes moved from her face to the envelope, and a frown of confusion crossed his features. He said something to Eliza, then made his way over to Naomi's table. "What's that?" he asked, nodding at the envelope. Naomi took a deep breath. "Miles, your mother was just here." His face went blank with shock. "What? My mother is in Boston at the treatment center." "No, Miles, she's here, in remission," she said. Naomi held out the envelope. "She gave me this. It's from your father. Miles stared at the envelope as if it might bite him. My father has nothing to say that I want to hear. He's dying, Miles. The color drained from his face for the second time in her presence. How would she know that? They've been divorced for 20 years. I don't know, but she said he wants to make amends. To meet James, Naomi hesitated, and to tell you something important, something about why he left. Miles's jaw tightened. I know why he left, because staying was too hard, because it was easier to start over with someone who wasn't broken. Naomi reached for his hand. Maybe there's more to the story. Miles looked back at James, who was showing something to Eliza, his small face animated with excitement. I promised you no more secrets, he said finally, no more running from the past. He took the envelope, his hand trembling slightly. But this might be more than I can handle right now. You don't have to face it alone, Naomi said softly. Miles's eyes met hers, vulnerable and questioning. You'll stay with me, even with all this chaos? Naomi thought about Jerome, who had run from every difficult moment, about her own father, who had stood by her mother through cancer and recovery, about the choice every person makes when faced with hard truths, to turn away or to stand firm. I'll stay, she promised, as long as you keep trying, as long as you don't shut me out. Miles nodded, relief washing over his features. He slid the envelope into his pocket, unopened. First, I need to finish meeting my son. As he walked back to James, Naomi watched the tentative way he interacted with the boy, careful, nervous, but with such obvious longing to connect. And for the first time since finding that first letter, she allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, this complicated man was worth the risk. She didn't see the figure watching through the cafe window, a woman with sharp green eyes and a determined expression. Vanessa Phillips turned away, pulling out her phone to make a call. It's me, she said quietly. You were right. She's still with him. We need to move to the next phase of the plan. The envelope from Miles's father remained unopened on Naomi's coffee table for 3 days. It sat there like an unwelcome guest, impossible to ignore, yet too difficult to address. Each time Miles came over, his eyes would drift to it, then quickly away. You don't have to open it, Naomi said on the third evening as they shared takeout Chinese food. But it's not going to disappear. Miles set down his chopsticks. I know. He reached for the envelope with reluctant fingers. It's just, once I read it, I can't unread it. Whatever my father wants, whatever excuses he's making now that he's dying, they become real. And you're not ready for that. I don't know if I'll ever be ready. Miles turned the envelope over in his hands. He left when I was 14, when Mom got sick. Who does that? Naomi reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Someone who was scared, probably. Fear makes people do terrible things. Is that supposed to make it okay? No, she said softly. But understanding doesn't mean forgiving. It just means you see the whole picture. Miles nodded slowly. With a deep breath, he tore open the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. His eyes moved across the page, his expression shifting from guarded to confused, to something Naomi couldn't quite read. Miles, she prompted when he remained silent for several minutes. He set the letter down carefully, as if it might shatter. He wants to see me, before it's too late. Are you going to go? Miles stared out the window into the gathering darkness. He says he has information about Mom's illness, something he never told me. He turned back to Naomi, his eyes troubled. Something that might explain why he left. What kind of information? He doesn't say, just that it's important, that he needs to tell me in person. Naomi studied his face. What are you thinking? That it's probably another manipulation, another excuse. Miles's jaw tightened. But what if it's not? What if there was a reason? He ran a hand through his hair. And then there's James. My father wants to meet him before he dies. That's a lot to process, Naomi said. What does your mother say about all this? I haven't spoken to her yet. I still can't believe she came to see you without telling me she was in town, that she's in remission. A flash of hurt crossed his face. Why wouldn't she tell me that herself? Maybe she was giving you space to deal with meeting James first, Naomi suggested. You've had a lot on your plate. Miles reached for her hand across the table. Thank you for being here through all of this. I know it's not what you signed up for when you accidentally texted me. Naomi smiled. Life rarely gives us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us what we need instead. And do you need this? Miles asked, gesturing to encompass the situation. The letter, the complications, himself. Naomi considered the question seriously. I need honesty. I need someone who doesn't run when things get hard. The rest, we can figure out together. Miles's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it and frowned. "What is it?" Naomi asked. "Eliza, she wants to reschedule my visit with James this weekend. Says he's not feeling well." Miles's disappointment was evident in his voice. "I bought tickets to the dinosaur exhibit at the museum." "There will be other weekends," Naomi assured him. "I know, it's just, I don't want to lose momentum. He was just starting to warm up to me." Naomi hesitated, then said, "Have you thought about asking to see him anyway, just for a short visit? If he's not seriously ill, maybe you could bring him some soup and a small gift. Show him that you care even when it's not about fun outings." Miles looked up, surprised. "That's actually a good idea. Sometimes being a parent is about showing up for the hard moments, not just the fun ones." "You sound like you have experience," Miles said, studying her. Naomi smiled sadly. "My dad was great at that. When I had the flu, he'd sit by my bed reading stories until I fell asleep, even when he was exhausted from working double shifts." Miles reached for his phone again. "I'm going to text Eliza back. Ask if I can drop by with some chicken soup and maybe a stuffed dinosaur." As he typed, Naomi felt a warm glow of pride. For all his missteps, Miles was trying, really trying. The next day, Naomi was finishing her shift when she spotted a familiar figure in the hospital waiting area. Catherine Whitaker sat with perfect posture, her silver-streaked hair elegant in a simple chignon. "Mrs. Whitaker," Naomi said, approaching cautiously. "Are you here for a checkup?" Catherine smiled, rising to greet her. "Ms. Carter, no, I'm here to see you, actually. And please call me Catherine." "Me?" Naomi glanced at her watch. "My shift ends in 10 minutes if you'd like to get coffee." "That would be lovely." In the hospital cafeteria, Catherine stirred her tea with deliberate movements. "I understand Miles received the letter from his father." "Yes," Naomi confirmed. "He read it last night. And I think he's considering visiting your ex-husband, but he has questions for you first." Catherine nodded, unsurprised. "I expected as much." "Why didn't you tell Miles yourself that you're in remission?" Naomi asked directly. "Why come to me instead?" Catherine's elegant fingers stilled on her teacup. "Because Miles and I have a complicated relationship. He associates me with guilt, with obligation. I don't understand. When I got sick, Miles was just starting college. Robert, his father, had already left, and Miles stepped into the role of caretaker." Catherine's eyes grew distant with memory. "He deferred his dreams, worked multiple jobs to help with medical bills. When his company took off, he threw money at my care. The best doctors, experimental treatments. He loves you," Naomi said simply. "Yes, but love twisted with obligation is a heavy burden." Catherine met Naomi's gaze directly. "I wanted him to meet his son without the weight of my presence, to make those choices freely, not because he thought it was what I wanted. And what do you want? For my son to be happy, to stop punishing himself for things that aren't his fault." Catherine's voice softened. "And I think you might be part of that happiness, Miss Carter." Naomi felt her cheeks warm. "We're still getting to know each other. I know my son. The fact that he's let you see his vulnerabilities tells me everything I need to know." Catherine took a sip of her tea, then continued. "Has he told you what's in the trust fund for James?" "No, just that it exists. $15 million. Catherine said it matter-of-factly. "To be used for education, healthcare, and to set James up when he's older. Miles has been adding to it every year, even when he couldn't see the boy." Naomi nearly choked on her coffee. 15 million? Money is the language Miles speaks most fluently. It's how he shows care when he doesn't know how else to express it. Catherine leaned forward. "The question is, will he learn to speak other languages too? To show love in ways that can't be measured in dollars?" "I think he's trying," Naomi said. "Yes, thanks in large part to you." Catherine checked her watch. "I should go. I'm meeting with my oncologist to discuss my continued treatment plan." She stood gracefully. "Will you tell Miles I'd like to see him when he's ready?" "I will." As Catherine walked away, Naomi was struck by the similarity between mother and son, both carrying unspoken burdens, both trying to protect others in ways that sometimes caused more harm than good. That evening, Naomi was preparing dinner when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Miles, his face alight with a joy she hadn't seen before. "I saw James," he announced, stepping inside. "He had a cold. Nothing serious. I brought soup and a stuffed T-Rex." Miles's words tumbled out rapidly. "He was shy at first, but then he showed me his dinosaur collection. He knows all their names, Naomi, scientific names, at 5. Naomi smiled at his enthusiasm. "He sounds like a smart kid. He's amazing." Miles's expression grew serious. "And I've missed so much. First steps, first words. 5 years of his life. that I can never get back. But you're here now, Naomi reminded him. That's what matters. Miles nodded, then noticed the pot simmering on the stove. You're cooking. I should have called first. It's just pasta, nothing fancy. There's plenty if you want to stay. I'd like that. Miles hesitated. There's something else. I called my mother today. Oh? Naomi busied herself with stirring the sauce, not wanting to admit she'd seen Catherine earlier. She confirmed what was in my father's letter, about her illness. Miles's voice grew tight. She has Lynch syndrome. It's genetic, predisposes her to certain cancers. Naomi turned from the stove. And that's why your father left? According to him, yes. He claims he couldn't handle the diagnosis, not just what it meant for Mom, but what it might mean for me and my siblings. Miles's jaw clenched. He says he was protecting us by leaving, that he couldn't watch her get sick, couldn't face the possibility that his children might have inherited the same condition. Have you been tested? Naomi asked gently. Not yet. I've been avoiding it. Miles met her eyes. But I need to know, especially now with James. Naomi nodded, understanding the implications. So what happens next? I'm going to Arizona next week, to see my father. Miles swallowed hard. And I've scheduled genetic testing for Monday. Do you want me to come with you? To either appointment? Miles's expression softened. You'd do that? Of course. He crossed the kitchen to her and took her face in his hands. Naomi Carter, you are extraordinary. He kissed her gently. And yes, I'd like you with me. For both. The pasta nearly boiled over, forcing Naomi to turn her attention back to the stove. As she drained the noodles, she said casually, I saw your mother today. Miles stiffened. Where? At the hospital. She came to see me. Naomi poured the pasta into the sauce, mixing carefully. She loves you very much, Miles. I know that. Do you? Because it seems like you've been keeping her at arm's length, the same way you did with James. Miles sighed, leaning against the counter. It's complicated. Life usually is. Naomi handed him plates to set the table. But sometimes we make it more complicated than it needs to be. Over dinner, Miles asked, What did my mother say to you? Naomi considered her answer carefully. She told me about the trust fund for James, and she explained why she came to me instead of approaching you directly at the cafe. Why did she? She didn't want to complicate your first meeting with James. She thought her presence would add pressure. Miles was quiet for a moment. She's probably right. I've spent so many years trying to take care of her, make things easier for her. I might have been performing for her approval rather than truly connecting with James. Your mother wants you to be happy, Miles. To stop carrying guilt that isn't yours to bear. Easier said than done. Miles pushed his pasta around his plate. I've built my entire adult life around responsibilities and obligations. I don't know how to just be. Maybe that's something we can figure out together, Naomi suggested. Miles looked up, hope lighting his eyes. I'd like that. Monday morning found them in the geneticist's office. Miles sat tensely in the waiting room, his knee bouncing with nervous energy. What if I have it? He asked quietly. The Lynch syndrome. Then we'll deal with it, Naomi said firmly. There are screening protocols, preventative measures. And James, what if I've passed it to him? Then he'll have the advantage of early knowledge, early monitoring. Naomi took his hand. Knowledge is power, Miles. Whatever the results, knowing is better than not knowing. The blood draw itself was quick and anticlimactic. It would be a week before they had results. As they walked to the parking lot, Miles's phone rang. He answered, his expression growing increasingly concerned. When? Is he all right? A pause. Yes, of course. I'll be right there. He hung up, already turning toward his car. That was Eliza. James fell at school and hit his head. They're taking him to the emergency room as a precaution. Go, Naomi urged. I'll take an Uber back to work. Are you sure? Absolutely. James needs you. Miles hesitated, then pulled her into a quick, fierce hug. Thank you for understanding. Call me later, she called as he rushed to his car. Hours passed with no word from Miles. Naomi tried to focus on her patients, but worry gnawed at her. Finally, as her shift ended, her phone buzzed with a text. James is fine. Minor concussion. Keeping him overnight for observation. I'm staying at the hospital with him. Eliza needed to go home for clothes, etc. Can I call you later? Relief washed through her as she replied, Of course. Give James a hug from me. It was nearly midnight when Miles finally called. He sounded exhausted but relieved. Doctors say he'll be fine, no lasting damage. But it was scary, Naomi, seeing him in that hospital bed so small. I know, she soothed, but you were there for him. That's what matters. Eliza said something interesting, Miles continued. She said she was glad I was there. that she'd been wrong to keep James from me all these years. That's huge, Miles. Yeah. His voice brightened. We talked about a more formal custody arrangement. Regular weekends, maybe even some weekdays eventually. I'm happy for you, Naomi said sincerely. For both of you. I wouldn't be here without you, you know. Taking this step, you would have found your way eventually. I'm not so sure. Miles's voice grew serious. Naomi, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have mentioned earlier. A knot formed in Naomi's stomach. What is it? Vanessa called me today. She's heard about my father being ill. She wants to come to Arizona with me. Oh, Naomi wasn't sure what she'd been expecting, but it wasn't that. And what did you say? I told her no, of course, but she was insistent. Said she and my father had a special relationship, that he'd want to see her too. Do they have a special relationship? Miles sighed. My father always liked Vanessa. They're cut from the same cloth in some ways. Practical, unsentimental. When we were engaged, he spent more time talking business with her than trying to connect with me. And how do you feel about her wanting to come along? Honestly, I think it's inappropriate. We've been divorced for years. This is family business. Miles hesitated. But there's something else. Something about the way she's been acting lately that doesn't add up. What do you mean? First she visits you out of the blue. Then she starts calling me about James. Now she's inserting herself into my relationship with my father. Miles's voice lowered. I checked with my assistant today. Vanessa has been accessing company files she has no business looking at. Financial records mostly. You think she's up to something? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He stifled a yawn. I should try to get some sleep. These hospital chairs aren't made for comfort. Call me tomorrow? First thing, he promised. The following morning, Naomi arrived at the hospital for her shift to find Tasha waiting for her at the nurse's station, an odd expression on her face. What's wrong? Naomi asked, hanging up her coat. You've got a visitor, Tasha said. Says she's an old friend, been waiting for almost an hour. Naomi frowned. Did she give a name? Eliza something. Pretty blonde. Said it's urgent. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. Eliza Winters, James's mother. What could she possibly want with Naomi? She found Eliza in the waiting area, elegantly dressed in a simple sweater and slacks, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Ms. Winters? I'm Naomi Carter. Eliza stood, extending her hand. Thank you for seeing me. I know this is unexpected. Is James all right? Naomi asked immediately. He's fine. Miles is with him now. They're releasing him this afternoon. Eliza gestured to the chairs. Could we sit? I need to talk to you about something important. Naomi checked her watch. I have a few minutes before my shift starts. Once seated, Eliza got straight to the point. I understand you and Miles are involved. Yes, Naomi confirmed, wondering where this was heading. I need to warn you about something. About Miles. Eliza leaned forward, lowering her voice. He's not who you think he is. A cold feeling settled in Naomi's stomach. What do you mean? Miles is charming, attentive when it suits him, but ultimately he's his father's son. When things get hard, he disappears. That hasn't been my experience, Naomi said carefully. Not yet, Eliza countered, but give it time. Look at our situation. 5 years with minimal contact. Now suddenly he wants to be Father of the Year. From what I understand, you moved to Switzerland. You made it difficult for him to be involved. Eliza's eyes narrowed. Is that what he told you? That it was all my fault? No, actually, it was Vanessa who filled me in on those details. Vanessa Phillips? Eliza laughed bitterly. Now there's a reliable source. Let me guess. She painted herself as the wronged fiancé, and me as the schemer who tried to trap Miles with a baby? Naomi remained silent, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. Has Miles told you about the money? Eliza asked abruptly. What money? The $15 million he's supposedly set aside for James. Eliza's voice was razor-sharp. Did he mention that it's in a trust he controls completely? That James can't access it without Miles's approval? That it's structured to give Miles power over my son's future? Naomi's mind raced. Catherine had mentioned the trust, but not these details. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because you seem like a decent person, and decent people get hurt around the Whitaker family. Eliza stood up. Just be careful. Miles has a pattern of using money to control people he claims to care about. Ask yourself why he really wants custody of James now, after all these years. And ask yourself what he's not telling you about his relationship with Vanessa. With that, she walked away, leaving Naomi with a head full of questions and a heart heavy with doubt. Throughout her shift, Eliza's words echoed in Naomi's mind. Was there truth to her warnings? Was she missing something important about Miles? When her phone buzzed with a text from him in the afternoon, James released, taking him to Eliza's now. "Can I see you tonight?" She responded with a simple, "Yes." Miles arrived at the cottage around 7, looking tired but relieved. "James is already back to his dinosaur obsession," he reported with a smile. "Kids bounce back so quickly." "That's good," Naomi said, trying to sound normal. Miles picked up on her mood immediately. "What's wrong?" "Eliza came to see me today." His smile vanished. "What? Why?" "To warn me about you, apparently." Naomi met his eyes directly. "She had some interesting things to say about the trust fund you set up for James, about how it gives you control over him." Miles's face hardened. "She came to your workplace? That's completely inappropriate." "That's your concern? Not what she said?" "What she said is a twisted version of the truth." Miles paced the small living room. "Yes, the trust has conditions. It's for education, healthcare, housing, not for Eliza to access at will. That's standard practice. So you do control it." "I'm the trustee, yes." Miles stopped pacing to look at her. "Naomi, when I set up that trust, Eliza had just moved across the world with my son. I had no legal rights, no guarantee I'd ever see him again. The trust was the only way I could ensure James would be taken care of according to my wishes." Put that way, it made sense. But doubt had taken root. "What about Vanessa?" Naomi asked. "Eliza implied there's something I don't know about your relationship with her." Miles ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Vanessa and I are business partners, that's all. Yes, she's been acting strangely lately, but there's nothing between us." "You're sure about that?" "Absolutely." Miles sat beside her on the couch, taking her hands in his. "Naomi, what's really going on here? This isn't like you." Naomi pulled her hands away. "I don't know what's like me, Miles. We've known each other, what, a month? And in that time I've discovered you have a secret son, a trust fund you control, a dying father, a mother in remission, and an ex-fiancé who seems unusually invested in your life." She stood up, needing distance. "It's a lot to process." "I know it is," Miles said quietly, "and I'm sorry for all of it. But I've been honest with you, Naomi. Since that night with the letter, I've told you everything." "Have you?" She thought of Catherine's visit, of Eliza's warnings. "Because it feels like every day brings a new revelation. Another piece of the Miles Whittaker puzzle I didn't know existed." "What do you want me to say?" There was an edge to his voice now. "Yes, my life is complicated. Yes, I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to fix them, to be better." "I know you are." Naomi softened, seeing the genuine pain in his eyes. "I just need to be sure I'm not making another mistake, that I'm not Jerome all over again, ignoring warning signs because I want to believe in someone." Miles stood and approached her slowly, as if she might bolt. "I'm not Jerome, I'm not perfect, but I will never deliberately hurt you." He reached for her hand. "Come to Arizona with me. Meet my father. See for yourself who I am and where I come from." Naomi hesitated. "When?" "Friday. I've booked flights already. I was going to surprise you." The gesture was thoughtful, but it also highlighted how differently they approached life. Miles made decisions and expected others to follow. It was both his strength and his weakness. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll come with you." Relief washed over his face. "Thank you." He pulled her into an embrace. "We'll get through this, Naomi. All of it." As she rested her head against his chest, Naomi wanted desperately to believe him. But Eliza's words lingered in her mind like a shadow. Friday arrived with clear skies and nervous energy. Miles picked Naomi up early for their flight to Arizona, his normally confident demeanor replaced by quiet tension. "You okay?" Naomi asked as they drove to the airport. "Just thinking about seeing my father again. It's been almost 7 years." "That's a long time." Miles nodded, his eyes fixed on the road. "The last time was at my sister's wedding." He gave this heartfelt speech about family being the most important thing in life. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Pure hypocrisy from a man who abandoned his own. People change, Miles. Maybe he means it now. Maybe. Or maybe he's just afraid of dying alone. At the airport, they were making their way to security when a familiar voice called out, "Miles, Naomi, wait up!" They turned to see Vanessa Phillips striding toward them, elegant even in travel clothes, pulling a small suitcase. "What are you doing here?" Miles demanded. Vanessa smiled, unperturbed by his tone. "Going to Arizona, of course. Your father specifically asked me to come." "You spoke to my father?" Miles's voice was dangerously quiet. "We've kept in touch over the years," Vanessa said smoothly. "He's always regretted the way things ended between you two. This visit means a lot to him." Miles's jaw worked as he controlled his anger. You had no right to go behind my back. Miles, Naomi murmured, aware they were creating a scene. Vanessa's smile never wavered. We can discuss this on the plane. Our boarding group was just called. As they made their way through security, Miles whispered to Naomi, I'm sorry about this. I had no idea she'd actually show up. It's fine, Naomi assured him, though she felt distinctly uncomfortable with the situation. On the plane, fate, or perhaps Vanessa's machinations, placed all three of them in the same row. Miles sat in the middle, a physical buffer between the two women. So, Naomi, Vanessa said once they were airborne, leaning across Miles, has Miles told you about his father's estate? It's quite substantial from what I understand. Miles stiffened. That's not relevant. Of course it is, Vanessa persisted. Robert's health is declining rapidly. Decisions will need to be made. Assets divided. I'm not interested in his money, Miles said flatly. Vanessa raised an elegant eyebrow. No? Not even the controlling interest in Whitaker Pharmaceuticals? The company your grandfather built? The company that should have been yours all along? Naomi looked at Miles in surprise. You never mentioned your father owned a pharmaceutical company. Because it doesn't matter, Miles insisted. I built my own company, my own life, with seed money from your trust fund, Vanessa pointed out. A trust fund your father established. Miles fell silent, his expression stormy. Don't mind him, Vanessa said to Naomi with a conspiratorial smile. The Whitaker men have a talent for holding grudges. Robert's the same way. Maybe they have good reasons, Naomi suggested, disliking Vanessa's presumptuous tone. Vanessa's smile cooled. Everyone has reasons, Naomi. The question is whether they're willing to move past them. The rest of the flight passed in uncomfortable silence. Miles flipped through a magazine without really seeing it. Vanessa worked on her laptop. Naomi gazed out the window, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. The hospice facility was nestled among the red rocks of Sedona, the beauty of the landscape a stark contrast to the purpose of the place. As they pulled up in their rental car, Miles sat motionless, staring at the entrance. You don't have to do this, Naomi reminded him gently. Yes, I do. Miles took a deep breath. For James. For myself. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Vanessa in the back seat. Though I'd prefer to do it without an audience. I can wait in the cafe, Naomi offered. Not you, Miles said quickly. I want you with me. He turned to Vanessa. Would you mind giving us some privacy for this first visit? Vanessa looked like she might argue, but then nodded. Of course. I'll check us into the hotel and meet you for dinner. Once she was gone, Miles leaned his forehead against the steering wheel. I don't know if I can do this, Naomi. She placed a hand on his back. You can, and you're not alone. Inside, the hospice was peaceful and well-appointed, more like a high-end hotel than a medical facility. The receptionist directed them to room 214. Outside the door, Miles hesitated one last time. What do I even say to him? Hello might be a good start, Naomi said with a small smile. Miles nodded, squaring his shoulders, and knocked. Come in, called a weak voice. The man in the bed barely resembled the robust figure in the family photos Miles had reluctantly shown Naomi. Robert Whitaker had once been tall and commanding. Now he was thin and pale, his once dark hair completely white. But his eyes, Miles's eyes, were alert and intelligent. Miles, Robert's voice strengthened with emotion. You came. I did. Miles remained by the door, his posture rigid. Robert's gaze moved to Naomi. And you must be Naomi. Catherine mentioned you. Thank you for bringing my son to me. I'm here because I chose to be, Miles said sharply. Not because anyone brought me. Robert nodded, accepting the rebuke. Of course. Please, sit down. Both of you. Miles moved stiffly to the chair beside the bed. Naomi took a seat by the window, giving father and son some space while remaining supportive. You're looking well, Robert said. The company's thriving from what I hear. Yes, and you've met your son, James. Miles's surprise was evident. How did you... Vanessa keeps me informed, Robert said. She's been a good friend over the years. So I've heard, Miles said dryly. What exactly is your relationship with my ex-fiancée, Dad? Robert sighed. Complicated. Like most things in my life. He shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. But that's not why I asked you here. Why did you ask me here? Because I'm dying. And because there are things you need to know. About your mother's illness, about why I left. Miles's jaw tightened. Mom told me about the Lynch syndrome. That it's genetic, that you couldn't handle the possibility that your children might have inherited it. That's part of the truth, Robert acknowledged, but not all of it. He took a labored breath. Your mother's cancer wasn't just bad luck, Miles. It was the result of exposure to a compound developed by Whitaker Pharmaceuticals, a compound I helped create. Miles went very still. What are you talking about? Project Artemis. It was supposed to be a breakthrough cancer treatment, but there were side effects, severe ones, in people with certain genetic markers, like Lynch syndrome, Naomi said quietly from her position by the window. Robert nodded. Exactly. Your mother was part of an early trial group. She didn't know, none of the participants knew, about the risks, about what we'd found in the lab rats but chose to ignore because the potential profits were too great. Miles stood up abruptly. Are you telling me you poisoned my mother? Your wife? Not deliberately, Robert insisted. We didn't understand the mechanism fully then, but when she was diagnosed, that when I saw the correlation, I couldn't face what I'd done. So you ran away, Miles said bitterly. Left her to deal with it alone. Left us. I know it was unforgivable, Robert said, his voice breaking. But I've spent the last 20 years trying to make it right, funding research into Lynch syndrome, developing better screening methods. Does Mom know? Miles demanded. About your role in her illness? Robert shook his head. I couldn't bring myself to tell her, that's why I've asked to see you. You need to know the truth about the company, about what's in the family vault. What vault? At Whitaker Pharmaceuticals. There are records, research data, evidence of what we did, what I did, evidence that could help others with Lynch syndrome, that could help you if… Robert couldn't finish the sentence. If I have it too, Miles said flatly. Yes. Robert reached for his son's hand. Miles didn't pull away, but he didn't return the gesture either. I'm leaving you controlling interest in the company, Miles, not because you deserve to be burdened with my sins, but because you're the only one I trust to make it right. Miles stared at his father in disbelief. You think I want your company? After what you've just told me? No, but I think you'll want justice for your mother and for yourself. Robert's eyes were pleading. The company is developing a new treatment, one that could help people with Lynch syndrome, but there are those on the board who want to bury the past, who don't want the connection between our earlier work and the current research to come to light. Who? Edward Chambers, your uncle, and… Robert hesitated. And who, Dad? Vanessa Phillips. She's been working with Edward for years, using her connection to you to gather information. Miles sat back, stunned. Vanessa? But she's my business partner. She's… A very ambitious woman, Robert finished for him. One who saw an opportunity in your family's company, in your family's tragedy. Naomi moved to Miles's side, placing a hand on his shoulder. This is a lot to take in at once, Mr. Whitaker. Maybe we should continue this conversation tomorrow. Robert nodded, clearly exhausted. Of course. I've waited years to unburden myself. I can wait one more day. He looked at his son with sad eyes. I don't expect your forgiveness, Miles. I just want to give you the truth, finally. Miles stood up. I'll be back tomorrow. His voice was controlled, but Naomi could feel the tension radiating from him. Alone. In the car, Miles sat in silence for several minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel though the engine wasn't running. Miles, Naomi prompted gently. Talk to me. My whole life, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything I thought I knew. It's all been a lie. Not everything, Naomi said, taking his hand. Not James. Not your mother's love for you. Not us. Miles looked at her, his eyes filled with a pain that broke her heart. How do I face her, Naomi? How do I tell my mother that my father's company, his greed, is the reason she got sick? I don't know, Naomi admitted. But you won't have to do it alone. Miles started the car with a grim expression. First, I need to have a conversation with Vanessa. Find out exactly what game she's been playing. Do you believe what your father said about her? I don't know what to believe anymore. Miles pulled out of the hospice parking lot. But I intend to find out. At the hotel, they found Vanessa waiting in the lobby, a picture of elegant patience. Her smile faded when she saw Miles's expression. How was your visit? She asked cautiously. Enlightening, Miles said coldly. We need to talk. Privately. Vanessa glanced at Naomi. Perhaps your friend would like to rest after the journey. Naomi stays with me, Miles said firmly. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her. They moved to a quiet corner of the hotel bar. Once seated, Miles wasted no time. How long have you been working with Edward Chambers? Vanessa's composure slipped for just a moment before she recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. Project Artemis, the family vault, my father's role in my mother's cancer. Miles leaned forward. How much of it did you know? Miles, you're upset. Your father is dying. He's clearly confused. Stop lying, Vanessa. Miles cut her off. For once in your life, just tell the truth. Vanessa's eyes hardened. The truth? The truth is that your father's company is sitting on a gold mine, a treatment for Lynch syndrome that could be worth billions. But instead of developing it, he's been hiding it away out of guilt. So you decided to what? Steal it? Use me to get to it? Not steal. Liberate. Vanessa's voice took on a passionate edge. Do you have any idea how many people could benefit from this research? How many lives could be saved, including potentially your own? Don't pretend this is about saving lives, Miles said disgustedly. This is about money. It always has been with you. Vanessa's laugh was bitter. That's rich coming from you, Miles. The man who thinks throwing money at problems absolves him of actually dealing with them. She glanced at Naomi. Has he told you about his mother's care facility, the one he pays for but never visits, or about the research foundation he funds but takes no interest in? Miles Whitaker, the great philanthropist, as long as he doesn't have to get personally involved. Miles flinched as if struck. Naomi placed a hand on his arm. I think this conversation is over, she said firmly to Vanessa. Oh, it's just beginning, Vanessa replied, standing. Your father plans to leave you controlling interest in Whitaker Pharmaceuticals, Miles, but Edward and I have other plans, plans that were in motion long before you decided to play the prodigal son. With that, she walked away, leaving Miles and Naomi in stunned silence. She's been using me, Miles said finally. All these years, she's been working against me, against my family. You couldn't have known, Naomi assured him. I should have. Miles's expression was grim. I let her into every aspect of my life, my company, my family. He met Naomi's eyes. I have to stop her, Naomi, her and my uncle, before they bury the truth about what happened to my mother, before they profit from it. How? I need to see what's in that vault. Need to understand exactly what my father was involved in. Miles checked his watch. It's not too late to call my lawyer, to start the process of claiming my inheritance early. Miles, wait. Naomi squeezed his hand. Take a breath. Think this through. If Vanessa and your uncle are as determined as they seem, rushing in might play right into their hands. Miles nodded slowly. You're right. I need a plan. He pulled out his phone. I need to call my mother. She deserves to hear this from me, not from Vanessa or anyone else. As Miles stepped away to make the call, Naomi's own phone buzzed with a text. The number was unfamiliar. This is Eliza. Need to talk to you about Miles. It's urgent. Call me when you can. Naomi stared at the message, a sense of foreboding washing over her. What more could possibly go wrong? Across the lobby she could see Miles pacing as he spoke with his mother, his free hand gesturing emphatically. Whatever he was telling her, it was clearly difficult. As Naomi watched him, this complicated man who had stumbled into her life because of a wrong number, she felt a surge of protectiveness. Despite all the revelations, despite the walls he'd built around himself, Miles was trying to be a better father, a better son, a better man. But as her phone buzzed again with another text from Eliza, he's not who you think he is. Please call, for your own safety. Naomi couldn't help but wonder if there were still more secrets to uncover, secrets that might change everything once again. Naomi stared at the text from Eliza, her stomach knotting with unease. He's not who you think he is. Please call, for your own safety. Across the hotel lobby, Miles continued his intense conversation with his mother, unaware of Naomi's growing concern. She hesitated, then stepped outside to make the call. Eliza answered on the first ring. Naomi, thank God, where are you? In Arizona with Miles. He's visiting his father. You need to get away from him, Eliza said urgently. Now, before it's too late. What are you talking about? Naomi kept her voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. I've been doing some digging since we last spoke. About Miles, about Whitaker Enterprises. Eliza's voice was tense. The technology they're developing. It's not what you think, and it's connected to something his father's company did years ago. Project Artemis, Naomi said quietly. There was a pause. You know about that? Miles's father just told us. About his role in Catherine's cancer. About the company covering it up. Then you understand how dangerous this is. Eliza's voice dropped. These people will do anything to protect their secrets. Vanessa Phillips has been calling me, asking questions about you, about how much you know. Naomi's blood ran cold. Vanessa is here in Arizona with us. Get out of there, Naomi, please, for your own safety. Why do you care? Naomi couldn't help asking. You barely know me. There was a long pause. Because despite everything, I don't think Miles is a bad person, just it lost, and because James likes you. You've talked to James about me? Naomi was surprised. Miles mentions you when he visits. James says you make his daddy smile. Eliza's voice softened. Look, I may have my issues with Miles, but I don't want to see either of you hurt. And Vanessa Phillips is dangerous. She's been working with Miles's uncle for years. They've been trying to get control of both companies, Whitaker Pharmaceuticals and Whitaker Enterprises. Why? There's something in Miles's research, something he doesn't even realize is significant. When combined with the old Artemis research, it could be worth billions, but it could also be dangerous in the wrong hands. Naomi saw Miles ending his call, looking around for her. I have to go. Thank you for the warning. Be careful, Naomi. And tell Miles to check the back of his father's watch. He'll understand. The call ended, leaving Naomi with more questions than answers. She took a deep breath and went back inside. Miles met her halfway across the lobby, his face drawn with emotion. I just told my mother everything. About Dad's role in her illness, about Vanessa. How did she take it? Better than I expected. She said she'd suspected something all along, but never wanted to burden me with her suspicions. Miles ran a hand through his hair. She's flying out tomorrow, wants to see my father one last time. That's remarkable, Naomi said, genuinely moved by Catherine's capacity for forgiveness. She's always been the strongest of us. Miles noticed her troubled expression. What's wrong? Did something happen while I was on the phone? Naomi hesitated, then decided honesty was the only way forward. Eliza called. She's worried about Vanessa. Says she's dangerous. Miles's eyes darkened. What else did she say? To check the back of your father's watch, that you'd understand. Miles went very still. My grandfather's watch, the one Dad always wore. He checked the time. We need to go back to the hospice now. The night staff at the hospice was minimal, but the nurse at the desk recognized them from earlier. Mr. Whitaker is sleeping, she said. Visiting hours are over. Please, Miles said, his usual authority softened by genuine concern. I forgot to ask him something important. I'll only be a minute. The nurse hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. No more. Robert was indeed sleeping when they entered his room, his breathing shallow but steady. Miles approached the bedside table where a few personal items were arranged, reading glasses, a worn paperback, and an antique pocket watch on a gold chain. Carefully, Miles picked up the watch. It was heavy, ornate with the Whitaker family crest engraved on the front. He turned it over, examining the back. There's nothing here, he murmured, disappointed. Try opening it, Naomi suggested. Miles clicked the small latch. The watch face swung open, revealing not just the expected clock mechanism, but a small compartment behind it. Inside was a tiny key. What is that? Naomi asked. I don't know. Miles studied the key. But my father obviously wanted me to find it. Robert stirred in his sleep, mumbling something incoherent. Miles leaned closer. The vault, Robert whispered, his eyes still closed. The truth is in the vault. Miles straightened, the key clutched tightly in his hand. We need to get to Whitaker Pharmaceuticals, tonight. Miles, it's nearly midnight. How are we going to get into a pharmaceutical company at this hour? I'm Robert Whitaker's son and heir, Miles said, a new determination in his voice. And it's time I started acting like it. Whitaker Pharmaceuticals was located on the outskirts of Sedona, a gleaming modern facility nestled among the red rocks. Despite the late hour, the security lights blazed, and a guard was stationed at the front gate. This is crazy, Naomi whispered as they approached in their rental car. What's your plan? The direct approach, Miles said, rolling down his window as they reached the gate. The guard stepped forward. Can I help you? Miles Whitaker. To see Edward Chambers. The guard checked his clipboard. I don't have you on the visitor list, sir, and Mr. Chambers isn't here at this hour. Call him, Miles said firmly. Tell him Robert Whitaker's son is here, with the key. The guard hesitated, then stepped into his booth to make the call. A few minutes later, he returned. Mr. Chambers says to let you in. He'll meet you at the main entrance. As they drove through the gate, Naomi gave Miles a worried look. Are you sure about this? If what your father and Eliza said is true, Edward Chambers is not someone we want to meet in a deserted building in the middle of the night. I need to know what's in that vault, Miles said grimly. And I need to confront the man who helped cover up what happened to my mother. Edward Chambers was waiting for them at the entrance. A tall man in his 60s with silver hair and the same piercing eyes as Robert. His smile didn't reach those eyes as he greeted them. Miles, this is unexpected, and you've brought a friend. My partner, Naomi Carter, Miles said, his tone making it clear the introduction wasn't up for discussion. Edward's smile tightened. Of course. Please come in. The interior of Whitaker Pharmaceuticals was all gleaming white surfaces and state-of-the-art technology. Edward led them through silent corridors to his office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the moonlit landscape. I understand you have a key, Edward said once they were seated. Miles held up the small metal object. To the family vault. I want to see what's inside. Edward leaned back in his chair. The vault is just old research, nothing of interest to someone with your modern perspective. My father seems to think otherwise. Robert is dying, Edward said bluntly. His mind is not what it was. Then you won't mind if I see for myself. Edward studied Miles for a long moment, then shrugged. As you wish, but I should warn you, some truths are better left buried. He led them to an elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. Family only, Edward explained, as the scanner read his print. The elevator descended deeper than Naomi had expected, finally opening onto a sterile corridor that looked older than the rest of the facility. The original labs, Edward said, noticing her surprise. Where Whitaker Pharmaceuticals began. At the end of the corridor was a heavy door with an old-fashioned lock. Edward gestured to it. Your key, Miles. Miles stepped forward and inserted the small key. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door swung open to reveal a room filled with filing cabinets and shelves of notebooks. In the center was a large safe. The actual vault, Edward said. Your key won't open that, I'm afraid. Only 2 people have the combination, your father and myself. Then open it, Miles demanded. Edward smiled thinly. I think not. He pulled a small handgun from his jacket pocket. I'm afraid this is where our tour ends. Naomi froze, her heart pounding. Miles moved slightly, positioning himself between her and his uncle. What's in the safe that's worth killing for, Uncle Edward? He asked, his voice remarkably steady. The future, came a voice from behind them. Vanessa stood in the doorway, elegant even at this late hour. Or should I say, a very profitable future. You're both insane, Miles said, his eyes never leaving the gun. Whatever is in there, it's not worth this. Oh, but it is. Vanessa stepped fully into the room. Project Artemis wasn't just a failed cancer treatment, Miles. It was a breakthrough. For people with the right genetic makeup, it didn't cause cancer, it prevented it. Enhanced cellular regeneration, extended lifespan. At the cost of killing others, Miles countered. Like my mother. Collateral damage, Edward said dismissively. The point is, the research was shelved because of your father's guilt. But combined with the neural interface technology your company has developed, we could create a treatment that targets specific genetic markers. That eliminates the risks. That makes people like you and me practically immortal, Vanessa added. While the less genetically fortunate, well, the market will sort that out. Naomi felt sick. You're talking about genetic discrimination on a global scale. I'm talking about evolution, Vanessa corrected. The next step for humanity, for those who can afford it. And you've been working toward this all along, Miles realized. Getting close to my father, getting engaged to me, partnering in my company. It was all to get access to both pieces of the research. Not initially, Vanessa admitted. At first I genuinely thought you were my ticket to the social circles I wanted to enter. But then I met your father at our engagement party. He was drunk, talking about his great sin, about the research he'd buried. That's when I saw the bigger picture. So you've been working with my uncle to what, resurrect Project Artemis? Miles asked. To finish what your father started, Edward corrected. To realize the potential he was too weak to pursue. By stealing my company's technology, Miles said coldly. We tried to do this the easy way, Vanessa sighed. I suggested a merger between Whitaker Pharmaceuticals and Whitaker Enterprises months ago. You refused. Because I wanted nothing to do with my father's company, Miles said. A decision that seems even wiser now. Edward's grip on the gun tightened. Enough talk. Open the safe, Miles. I told you I don't have the combination. But your father told you something, Edward insisted. Otherwise, why come here tonight? Miles shook his head. He told me to find the truth, that's all. Edward's patience was clearly wearing thin. I don't believe you. I think he's telling the truth, Vanessa said, studying Miles closely. Robert wouldn't have given him the combination, not directly. She turned to Naomi. But he might have told his nurse. Or his doctor. Naomi's blood ran cold as Vanessa's implication became clear. Leave her out of this, Miles said sharply. Too late, Edward replied, gesturing with the gun. You're both involved now, and neither of you is leaving until we open that safe. The tension in the room was broken by the sudden blare of an alarm. Red lights began flashing in the corridor outside. "What the hell?" Edward muttered, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening Miles needed. He lunged forward, grabbing for the gun. The two men struggled, the weapon between them. Naomi backed against the wall, searching desperately for something to use as a weapon. Vanessa moved toward the door. "I'll check what's happening." "Don't you dare leave," Edward grunted, still wrestling with Miles. The gun went off with a deafening crack in the enclosed space. For a terrible moment, Naomi couldn't tell who had been hit. Then Edward staggered back, a red stain spreading across his shoulder. Miles held the gun now, his face pale but determined. "It's over, Uncle Edward. Whatever you were planning, it ends now." Edward clutched his wounded shoulder, his eyes burning with hatred. "You're just like your father, too weak to do what needs to be done." The sound of running footsteps echoed in the corridor. Moments later, the room was filled with security personnel, followed by a familiar figure, Catherine Whitaker. "Mum?" Miles lowered the gun in shock. "What are you doing here?" "Saving you, apparently," Catherine said dryly. She nodded to one of the security guards, who took the gun from Miles's unresisting hand. Another began attending to Edward's wound. "I don't understand," Miles said. "How did you know where we were?" "Eliza called me after she spoke with Naomi. She was worried about both of you." Catherine's gaze shifted to Vanessa, who stood frozen by the door. "And she was right to be concerned." "Mrs. Whitaker," Vanessa began, her composure returning. "This is all a misunderstanding. Save it for the police, Ms. Phillips," Catherine cut her off. "I've already spoken with the board of directors. They're very interested in the unauthorized research you and Edward have been conducting, and in the funds you've been misappropriating to finance it." Vanessa's face hardened. "You can't prove anything." "Actually, we can," came another voice from the doorway. Robert Whitaker sat in a wheelchair, looking frail but determined, a nurse hovering anxiously behind him. "It's all in the safe. Every transaction, every unauthorized experiment, every death you covered up." Edward lunged toward his brother, only to be restrained by security. "You sanctimonious hypocrite, you started this, you created Project Artemis." "Yes," Robert acknowledged wearily, "and I've spent 20 years trying to make amends for that mistake." He looked at Miles. "I couldn't undo the past, but I could ensure the research was never misused again. Until now," Miles said, still trying to process everything that was happening. Robert wheeled himself to the safe and began turning the dial. "The combination is your birthday, Miles, the day that gave my life meaning." The safe door swung open, revealing stacks of files and several hard drives. "Everything is here, all the evidence of what Edward and Vanessa have been doing, and all the original Artemis research." "What happens now?" Naomi asked, finding her voice at last. "Now," Catherine said firmly, "we tell the truth, all of it, no matter the consequences." The next few days passed in a blur of police interviews, board meetings, and family revelations. Edward was arrested for assault and corporate espionage. Vanessa, facing similar charges, was cooperating with authorities in exchange for leniency. Robert's condition deteriorated rapidly after the confrontation at the lab. By the third day, he was drifting in and out of consciousness, his remaining time measured in hours rather than days. Miles sat by his bedside, Catherine on the other side. Naomi had offered to give them privacy, but Miles had asked her to stay. "I still don't understand why you kept all this secret," Miles said to his father during a moment of lucidity. "Why not expose Edward and Vanessa years ago?" "Because the evidence implicated me too," Robert replied weakly. "I was part of the original sin, and I was a coward." His gaze shifted to Catherine. "I couldn't bear for you to know what I'd done." "I've known for years, Robert," Catherine said softly, taking his hand. "A wife knows when her husband is carrying a burden too heavy to share." "Can you ever forgive me?" Robert asked, his voice breaking. "I already have," Catherine answered. "Long ago." Robert's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not," Catherine agreed, "but forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about healing, moving forward." Robert turned to Miles. "And you, son? Can you forgive me?" Miles was silent for a long moment. "I'm working on it," he said finally. "For James's sake, for Mum's, for my own." A ghost of a smile touched Robert's lips. "That's more than I hoped for." His eyes drifted to Naomi. "Take care of him. He's stronger than he knows, but he still needs someone to remind him of that." "I will," Naomi promised. Robert died peacefully that night, with Catherine holding one hand and Miles the other. His final words were an apology and a blessing, both long overdue but received with grace nonetheless. A week later, back in Baltimore, Naomi was preparing dinner when her doorbell rang. She opened it to find Miles standing there with a bouquet of lilies, the same flowers he'd brought that rainy night months ago. "I thought we could use a fresh start," he said, offering her the flowers. Naomi took them with a smile. "Come in. I was just making pasta." As Miles helped her set the table, she noticed a new calmness about him, a quiet certainty that hadn't been there before. "How's your mother?" she asked. "Better. The doctors are optimistic about her continued remission." Miles poured 2 glasses of wine. "She's decided to stay in Baltimore for a while, wants to get to know her grandson." "And how's James taking all of this? Suddenly having a grandmother and a more present father?" Miles smiled. "Kids are amazingly adaptable. He's already calling her Grandma Cat and asking when he can have a sleepover at her house." His expression grew more serious. "Eliza's been incredible through all of this. She's agreed to a formal custody arrangement. James will stay with me every other weekend and 2 days during the week." "That's wonderful, Miles. It's a start." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Naomi echoed, touching her glass to his. After dinner, they sat on the porch swing watching the stars emerge in the evening sky. Miles seemed lost in thought. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Naomi asked. "I was thinking about wrong numbers," Miles said. "About how one small mistake changed everything. For the better, I hope." "Definitely for the better." Miles took her hand. "The genetic test results came back yesterday." Naomi tensed. "And? I don't have the Lynch syndrome markers." Relief was evident in his voice. "Which means James is likely safe too, though we'll test him to be certain." "That's wonderful news, Miles." "It is. But it also made me realize something." He turned to face her fully. "Life is unpredictable. We can't control everything, no matter how hard we try. My father learned that the hard way. I almost did too." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you, Naomi Carter. Despite all the chaos, despite all the revelations and complications, that's the one thing I'm certain of." Miles reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I'm not proposing. Not yet. We both need more time. But this is a promise." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver ring with a small diamond. "A promise that whatever comes next, we'll face it together." "If you want to." Naomi looked at the ring, then at Miles. This complicated man who had shown up at her door with flowers meant for someone else, who had struggled and failed and tried again, who was learning finally that love wasn't about control or money or fixing things, but about showing up day after day with an open heart. "I want to," she said simply. Miles slipped the ring onto her right hand. "A promise, not yet an engagement. When the time is right, we'll move it to the other hand." Naomi leaned against him, content in the moment. "Did you ever imagine when you got that wrong number text that we'd end up here?" Miles laughed softly. "Not in a million years, but I'm grateful every day for that mistake." "Me too," Naomi said, twining her fingers with his. "The flowers were meant for someone else, but they found their way to the right person after all." 6 months later, on a perfect spring day, James sat cross-legged on Naomi's porch, carefully arranging dinosaur figures in elaborate battle formations. Inside, Miles and Naomi were preparing a birthday cake for the now 6-year-old boy. "Do you think he'll like it?" Miles asked, nervous despite himself. It was the first birthday he'd celebrated with his son. "He'll love it," Naomi assured him, putting the final touches on the dinosaur-shaped cake. "It has chocolate and dinosaurs, his 2 favorite things." The doorbell rang and James leapt to his feet. "They're here." "I'll get it," Miles said, wiping his hands on a towel. He opened the door to find Catherine, elegant as always, holding a large wrapped gift. Behind her stood Eliza, looking slightly uncomfortable, but determined to make the day special for her son. "Grandma Cat," James exclaimed, rushing forward for a hug. "Did you bring me a present?" "James," Eliza said in a warning tone. "Manners." "Sorry," the boy said, not looking sorry at all. "Hello, Grandma Cat." "Hello, Mom, I'm very happy to see you both. Did you bring presents?" The adults laughed, the tension broken. As they moved inside, Naomi caught Miles's eye across the room. He looked happier than she'd ever seen him, surrounded by the family he'd once thought lost to him. Later, after cake and presents and dinosaur battles, Miles found Naomi in the kitchen, cleaning up. "Leave that for later," he said, taking the dish towel from her hands. "Come outside with me for a minute." On the porch, the evening was settling in, fireflies beginning to dot the yard with their gentle light. From inside came the sound of James chattering excitedly to his grandmother and mother about his new dinosaur encyclopedia. "I have something for you," Miles said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box, different from the one he'd given her 6 months ago. I think it's time to move that promise ring to your other hand if you're ready. Naomi's heart swelled as she looked at this man who had become so dear to her. I'm ready. Miles opened the box to reveal a stunning engagement ring, elegant but not ostentatious, perfectly suited to her taste. Naomi Carter, will you marry me? Will you help me build the family we both deserve? Yes, she said simply, tears of joy shining in her eyes. Yes to all of it. As Miles slipped the ring onto her finger, the porch door opened and James peeked out. Dad, Naomi, are you coming back inside? Grandma Cat says it's time for ice cream. We'll be right there, buddy, Miles promised. James noticed the ring on Naomi's finger, his eyes widening. Is Naomi going to be my stepmom now? Miles knelt down to his son's level. Would that be okay with you? James considered this seriously for a moment, then nodded. Yeah, she makes the best dinosaur cakes. And she makes you happy, Dad. She does, Miles agreed, his voice thick with emotion. She really does. As they went back inside to join the others, Naomi thought about the journey that had brought them here. A wrong number, a rainy night, flowers meant for someone else. Sometimes life's biggest mistakes led to its greatest blessings, and sometimes love found its way home through the most unexpected paths. In the warm light of the cottage, surrounded by a family pieced together from broken parts and second chances, Naomi and Miles shared a smile that held both their past and their future, a future they would build together, one day at a time. The end.